Okay, I want you to picture this. Imagine a mighty, utterly untouchable ancient civilization. We're talking a society of absolute physical giants, people possessing immense wealth and towering architecture that literally pierced the sky. Now imagine that entire civilization being completely erased by the very force of nature they thought was coming to save them. Welcome everyone to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely fascinating and honestly terrifying chapter from ancient history. We're looking at the story of Prophet Hud and the fall of Ad, as it's detailed in the renowned historical text Stories of the Prophets by Ibn Kathîr. Let's unpack this incredible narrative and see what lessons are still buried out there in the sands. To really wrap our heads around this story, we first have to set the scene with the people of Ad. Living many years ago in the windswept hills of an area stretching between Yemen and Oman, these were no ordinary people. The source describes them as physically well-built, and they were incredibly renowned for their craftsmanship. I mean, they didn't just build homes. They constructed these massively tall buildings with lofty towers right out on the plains. They were outstanding among all the nations of their time in both power and wealth. For sure, they were the undisputed superpowers of their era, physically dominant and materially just incredibly successful. But here's where we see a huge, almost tragic disconnect. On one hand, you have Ad's immense material success, right? Their raw physical strength, their towering architecture, the abundant rain that fueled all that wealth. But on the other hand, there was a deep, deep spiritual corruption. Their unmatched political power was held tightly by these unjust, tyrannical rulers that nobody dared to speak against. And unfortunately, all that wealth and power just made them incredibly boastful. They didn't deny a creator existed, but they completely refused to worship him alone. Instead, they literally chose to carve stones with their own hands and worship those as idols. It was a society that was incredibly rich in matter, but utterly bankrupt in spirit. So, enter Prophet Hud. Chosen from right among them to guide this incredibly stubborn society, Hud was a noble, resolute, and very tolerant man. His mission was straightforward, but man, was it difficult. He needed to guide his people back to the worship of one God and basically make them realize that worshiping stones they carved themselves was, frankly, an insult to their own intellect. And a really crucial point here is his selflessness. His people instantly suspected his motives. They asked what payment he wanted or if he just wanted to be their ruler. But Hud demanded absolutely nothing from them. No wealth, no power. He just wanted them to open their minds to the truth. His approach was honestly brilliant, and it's captured perfectly in his own words. "My reward is only from him who created me. Will you not then understand? And O my people, ask forgiveness of your Lord." He was directly appealing to their intellect. He was reminding these physical giants that their wonderful physiques, their strength, their blessings, none of that came from a carved piece of rock. It came from a creator. He wanted them to use their reason, to stop being blind to the favors they had been given, and to realize that true gratitude meant turning to the one who actually provided for them. Now, Hud didn't just stop at calling out idol worship. He introduced something revolutionary, a vital concept: the Day of Judgment. He explained that after death, after turning to literal dust, they would be resurrected and asked about their deeds. And he framed this in a perfectly logical argument centered on divine justice. Hud pointed out that in this life, good doesn't always win. Sometimes, like under the tyrannical rulers of Ad, evil totally overpowers good. So if there was no day of judgment, a massive injustice would prevail. Divine justice absolutely requires a day of accounting, where evil is punished and good is actually rewarded. So, how do you think the arrogant elite responded to this profound moral argument? With absolute mockery. The chiefs of Ad just couldn't fathom it. The text literally notes that a peal of laughter was heard among them. They're muttering among themselves, just utterly bewildered. To them, the whole idea was absurd. They argued that when a body decays, turns to dust, and gets swept away by the wind, how could it possibly return? Far, very far, is that which you were promised, they scoffed. They were so completely blinded by their own materialism. They genuinely believed there was nothing beyond the life of this world. We live, we die, and that is the whole shebang. As the years dragged on, the people of Ad just got prouder, more obstinate, and way more defiant. The conflict escalated rapidly, and since they couldn't defeat Hud's logic, they did what people do. They turned to personal attacks. They baselessly accused Hud of being a crazy lunatic, claiming they're stone idols that actually cursed him. They told him that because he had insulted their gods, those same lifeless stones had somehow driven him insane. It's a classic deflection tactic, right? Refuse to engage with the actual truth of the message and instead try to discredit the messenger by calling him mad. Hud's response to this? Absolutely fearless. Standing as one man against an entire empire of giants, he issues a firm ultimatum. He completely renounces them and their false gods, declaring, "I put my trust in Allah, my Lord and your Lord. So if you turn away, still I have conveyed the message." He even challenged them to plot against him and give him no respite, which proved right then and there that their stone gods had absolutely zero power to harm him. He drew a line in the sand. He knew that the immutable laws of life meant tyrannical arrogance would eventually meet its punishment. And that punishment began. But not with a sudden explosion. It started with a terrifying, suffocating shift in the environment. First, the severe drought just spread throughout the land. The sky completely stopped sending rain. The sun baked the desert sands, and the text describes the sun looking like a literal disk of fire settling right on the people's heads. When they actually asked Hud about it, he told them straight up, this was the anger of their creator, and if they repented, the rain would return. But, true to form, they just mocked him even more and dug their heels in.
And then comes the false hope. This part is just chilling. The drought worsened. The once lush trees turned yellow, the plants completely died. But then, one day, the people look up and they see the sky full of dense clouds, moving steadily toward their valleys. Imagine the scene. They are rushing out of their tents, overjoyed, pointing up at the sky. "This is a cloud bringing us rain," they're crying out. They genuinely believed that the nature they had always relied upon was finally coming to save them. They thought the drought was over, completely misunderstanding the reality of the dark mass approaching them.
Because they were horrifyingly mistaken. The instant the cloud arrived, the weather flipped in a split second. That burning, dry, suffocating heat suddenly replaced by a violently cold, stinging wind. This wasn't a rainstorm. It was a furious, purely destructive gale. The sheer suddenness of the temperature drop, combined with the violent force of the wind, sent massive shockwaves of panic through everyone. The very environment they thought they had mastered turned against them in the blink of an eye. And the terror escalated in brutal, relentless stages. The wind just increased day after day, night after night. The people of Ad, these massive physical giants, turned and fled, trying to hide in their tents. But the gale ripped the tents right from their stakes. They tried hiding under heavy cloth covers, but the wind tore those away too. The text actually describes this horror, where the wind slashed their clothing and their skin, penetrating the very apertures of their bodies. It just sucked the core out of everything it touched, causing it to decompose. This relentless storm raged continuously for 8 days and 7 consecutive nights, dismantling every single physical defense they had.
When the wind finally stopped, apocalyptic. The entire region, which was once the seat of the most powerful civilization on Earth, was reduced to utter ruins. These incredibly strong, boastful men of Ad lay overthrown and destroyed. The source text vividly describes them looking like hollow trunks of palm trees, just completely emptied out, lifeless, and discarded. Ultimately, their magnificent, lofty city was completely swallowed up by the desert sands, literally erasing them from the face of the earth.
But amidst all that devastating destruction, a moment of relief. Prophet Hud and his small group of believers were completely spared. Through that entire terrifying storm, they remained unharmed. They eventually migrated to Hadramaut to live in peace, worshiping their true Lord, far away from the tyranny that had just consumed their former home. Which brings us to the end of our explainer, leaving us with a really profound question to think about. If absolute physical power, brilliant engineering, and immense wealth couldn't save the people of Ad from being destroyed by their own blind arrogance, what truly secures a society's future? The story of Prophet Hud isn't just some ancient history, it's a stark, timeless reminder that material dominance without any spiritual and moral grounding is entirely fragile. Thank you so much for joining me as we explored this fascinating source material, and I really hope this leaves you with something powerful to ponder.